Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily, presented by Amazon Prime for January 9th, 2026. I'm Dave DuFour here with Zena Keita. Coming up, Cavs and Wolves matched up. We're going to talk about that game a little bit. The Pacers snapped their 13-game losing streak. We're going to hit that. And I sat down with Sam Amick and asked him the question we all want to know: is Giannis leaving Milwaukee? Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Zena. Good to see you. Hope you're doing okay out there in Chicago. You got the athletic show tomorrow morning.
Doing great. Excited to get back on it, starting the new year strong.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we talk about the Timberwolves Cavaliers game, we would like to also send our thoughts and prayers to everyone in Minneapolis, to the family of Renee Nicole Good, and join the Timberwolves and the entire country and the world in sending our condolences and thoughts. The Timberwolves had a moment of silence before the game for Renee Nicole Good, whose life was tragically and recklessly taken from her by a federal agent in Minneapolis the other day. But again, our thoughts and prayers to her family and friends and everybody affected by this. There was a basketball game. As heavy as all of our hearts were, there was a basketball game. And it was pretty good. The Timberwolves, they pick up another win, 131-122. They defeat the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's a good win for them in a string of good wins. They've been 15-5, Zena, since Thanksgiving. We've talked about their offense. They've got a number one guy in Anthony Edwards, who typically shows up every single night. But that number two guy, Julius Randle, 28 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists, the playmaking. I mean, the way that they're able to use Anthony Edwards off of Julius Randle, we got to see that against a top-level defense in the Cleveland Cavaliers, at least when everybody's out there and playing at their best. And they were able to score. 131 points on this Cavs defense is still something. You
have 4 players in 20 or more scoring. That's huge. When you look on the other side of the ball, you only have Donovan Mitchell being able to put that number in 30. And Sam Merrill popped tonight, of course, or last night. But it's just not enough coming from Cleveland in terms of their offensive production. They started slow. They got blown out in that third quarter. Their defense was just kind of all over the place a little bit all tonight. Darius Garland looked a little bit lost on defense. He was just continuously being overtaken, in my opinion. Overall, Minnesota did what they do, which is shoot threes and shoot them very well. They made 20 made threes versus 11 only for the Cavs. That's not going to be enough. But yeah. I'm liking the way that Minnesota's rolling. Yeah, and look, I will say the Cavs, they tried out a little bit of a different look in the starting lineup. Craig Porter Jr. was out there because DeAndre Hunter has just been struggling for them. They've got to figure this out. And maybe sometimes it's going to be Sam Merrill when you need extra offense, and sometimes it's going to be maybe Jalen Tyson or DeAndre Hunter or someone. But they're in the stage of, we have to figure out how to solve our problems because the playoffs are coming. We don't want to be a first round out. And right now, they look like it. 1,000%. They have got to get that defense together, and they look soft. Yeah. They got to toughen up a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. The Pacers, they lost 13 in a row. This is just, again, the injury stuff with them. They lose Miles Turner. It's been a season from hell, and they get a big win. So congratulations to the Pacers, snapping the longest losing streak in team history by beating the Hornets. And it was a close game. They win by 2. And TJ McConnell seals the deal with an inbound steal in this game. This was just a scrappy win for the Pacers, who, look, let's be honest here. They're angling for a very high lottery pick. But they do beat a Hornets team that's been playing better lately. So this wasn't just some kind of a, one of these Thursday nights in January games that you could just throw away. Andrew Nembhard out of this game, lower back soreness still. Their point guard situation has just been rough all season long. And you go up against a team like Charlotte, who has the luxury of bringing LaMelo Ball off the bench. LaMelo Ball goes for 33 points off the bench, 7 of 15. And Zena, look, the Hornets had this game. They did have it under control late. And LaMelo made a huge mistake in transition. He tries to throw a lob to Moussa Diabate, and it goes awry. Pascal Siakam comes down on the other end, hits the layup. Everything fell apart. And I want to note, I was watching the pregame. I got to give LaMelo Ball credit here because I do think that we
we tend to clown him a little bit, right? He
Uh,
is, I will say playful. I don't want to call a grown man childish, but he's playful. And I think that we kind of treat him in a certain way, like he's not mature, which, hey, I've seen the way he tears out of the arena in his car. That's not maturity. But I saw maturity up on the podium from him last night, where he talked about he had regret about that play. He was like, in that time and score, I got to back out. But the thing that I love about LaMelo is that he will throw that lob. Like, he's so fun to watch because he's fearless. So I hope that as he matures, he doesn't rein that in. Don't lose your dinosaur, LaMelo. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that. I'm happy that you call that out, because there is an element that we still see LaMelo Ball as a kid coming out of high school that was throwing lobs to himself off the backboard. And we see that entertainment value in his game. And so when you make mistakes, it's easy to equate, it's just that he still hasn't grown up from his high school game. It's like, no, but there's also an element of, this is what has made him so fun. And this is also what's made his team so trusting of him, that he will throw that up. He will look for you. And so there is some element to that too. And it was a really great effort by the Indiana Pacers at the end of the game. It's actually similar to what Minnesota did, because Cleveland made a run for it, or tried to make a run for it in the fourth quarter, and Minnesota was just more scrappy. And you saw very much so like Indiana be very similar to that, being scrappier, being a little bit more, we need to win this game. And I ain't gonna lie to you, Dave, I didn't know they had a 13-game losing streak.
It just kind of snuck up on us.
I did not realize it was that bad. And so I'm happy they got the win. They were able to do it with LaMelo Ball getting 33 points off the bench. But the thing is, he had 33 points at 19 minutes and 17 seconds. He ends up playing 26 minutes total, defers, I guess, a little bit more in the fourth quarter. But my question to you, Dave, because this has come up a lot, where people will go off in the first half, they'll go off in the first three quarters, and then they go silent. Philosophically, would you rather go for 40 in the first three quarters and then silent in the fourth, or have an even 5, 5, 5, 5, but it's only 20 points?
I mean, I just want to win. So if I get 40 and and I don't score in the fourth because we're winning, I'll take the 40. But if I get 20, I'm going to take 20. This is why, who's the perfect player for this is Kevin Durant. Because Kevin Durant is going to get 7 points in a quarter every quarter for the rest of his basketball career until he decides he stops. And then you've got that outlier where he might go for 20. I think that scoring, it's funny because this season, I think that with some of the teams that have struggled, when you look at, Cleveland Cavaliers, it's been very much like, please, Donovan, save us at the end of games, and he has to save up quite a bit of energy for that. So, I mean, there's an argument to be made that some players maybe should save their best stuff for later and kind of coast a little bit. LeBron famously does that, or has done that in his career through regular seasons where he saves his moments. But yeah, I think with LaMelo, I want to see him take more than 4 shots in the fourth quarter. Yeah. I want him to take more layups in the fourth quarter than the one that he took, because he can get to the basket, it's seemingly at will. Look, the guy is a great 3-point shooter. I mean, he launches them 7 of 15 in the game. So I want him to shoot threes. But to me, it's don't be passive, attack the basket. And I did not like, and I'll never knock a guy for making a pass, but I felt like he got the drive at the end of the game with the chance to tie the game up, and he kicked the ball out to Colin Sexton, who didn't really wind up with a good look. I would have rather seen LaMelo kind of force the play at the basket. He was guarded and it was contested, but I think I would have liked to see him actually just go to the basket instead of kick that one out. But now I'm splitting hairs. Speaking of, all right, before we go to break, a little programming note, we originally were going to have Joel Lorenzi on the show to talk Bulls Heat, but we had to make a scheduling change. And luckily for us, although I would have loved to talk to Joel after the game was canceled, Bulls Heat was postponed because the court had condensation. And Zena, there's a funny thing, right? Like, this doesn't happen very often, which is pretty incredible. But a lot of the NBA arenas double as hockey arenas. So the Chicago Blackhawks share the United Center with the Chicago Bulls. They just put that floor right down over the ice. There's some kind of a barrier in between. And you would think, as cold as Chicago is outside, there's no way that ice is able to melt enough that it causes the floor to get wet. But apparently that's what happens sometimes.
Interestingly enough, I showed up to Chicago in my full parka, thinking it was freezing cold, and it's warmer here than it is in the Bay. That's the crazy part. I think that is what Chicago was not prepared for, and that's exactly what happened with that condensation.
There we go. All right. From Zena, our meteorologist on the scene in Chicago. Thank you very much for that. Guys, stick around after the break. We got Sam Amick to talk trade, Trae Young trade, Giannis trade, every kind of trade. But before you go to that, just don't forget, guys, we're all we've got, and we're in this together. Trae Young was traded from the Atlanta Hawks to the Washington Wizards. That means trade season has begun. Here to break it down for us, Sam Amick, senior national writer at The Athletic. You guys know him. Sam, I know you've been busy, man. How's it going?
Dave DuFour, what's up, my guy? Great to see you. Busy is better than the alternative, so we're good, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, look, the trade, we kind of had Trae Young for CJ McCollum as like the base. Corey Kispert gets added, makes the salaries work.
Yep.
Feels like we had that trade kind of in the bag for a few days. It finally happens. Let's close the book on it. How did this come about? And what were the other options for Atlanta for Trae Young?
Well, I think that last question is the key one. I honestly have not still learned about other options beyond the Wizards. You know, you would try to canvass the league and find out who was interested. And it's funny because it was reported that Washington was Trae's preferred destination, and not trying to be glib, but it was like, okay, are we sure that list is beyond one team as far as interested parties? But the backstory on the Atlanta side, as you know, is that, you know, they come into the season with high hopes. They get celebrated during the offseason for the roster work they did, the front office, you know, with adding a lot of pieces that seemingly were going to fit well around Trae Young and some of his deficiencies. And next thing you know, everybody's getting hurt. Trae's getting hurt. Porzingis is getting hurt. They're not really able to see what it is that they built, but they do have this stretch where when Trae comes back from injury, they go 0-5 with him. They were 13-9 without him. Now, granted, there is a Porzingis factor within there as well, but it was a final straw. It was one of those things where the Hawks clearly looked at this and said, you know, that we got a guy making almost $50 million who's got a player option for next season. We might have some interest in, you know, this is a subplot that we'll keep tracking, is that Porzingis is going to be a free agent this summer. Whether it's him, they need a big, they need a rim protecting, big, and a guy that can give that presence and continue with their plan. And so Anthony Davis is certainly a real option that they've been looking at, but you're not going to have Trae and AD on the same roster. So Trae goes out, you know, this era of him doing his ice Trae thing that honestly people forget, you know, what he did at his peak and taking that team to the conference finals in 2021 and, you know, pissing off all the Knicks fans in the Garden and like some pretty great memories. And I think it's fair to him. You got to remember, this guy's a fantastic player. He's obviously a one-way player. Now the other side real quick on the Wizards, you know, that one is tricky because they do legitimately have a vision for him as a guy who could be part of the program long-term as their point guard, but there's dual purposes here. So I don't think he's going to hit the floor anytime soon. They're trying to keep their pick. He's banged up enough that they could justify him taking his time to get back. If you looked at last week, CJ McCollum, who obviously went to Atlanta in that deal, is hitting a game-winning shot. I think it was against Milwaukee, you know, on the right side, fadeaway, and like CJ, a proud vet, was not about to sit down anytime soon. You know what I mean? And so winning games is not what they're trying to do. But again, it's a real partnership. Trae goes to a Wizards team and a Wizards front office that includes Travis Schlecht, who was the former Hawks president who drafted him and who traded famously and infamously traded, the pick that was Luka Doncic for Trae back when he came into the league. So I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but that's kind of the trade from both sides.
This is why I asked, man. I mean, it's an interesting, sort of like tapestry that's been woven to create the situation. We talked about this the last couple of days on the show. I see the vision for it and also the flexibility that the Wizards have done. I think both teams did pretty well here. CJ McCollum's having a great year. Too good for a team that does not want to win games this year.
Right.
So it makes so much sense.
Right.
I was reading your interview with Giannis this morning, and I have been kind of hinting at this for the last few weeks. I've felt that obviously we haven't heard anything about any Giannis trades or any kind of rumors or anything like that. I've felt for the last few weeks like that's a done deal, like he's sticking around in Milwaukee. And I feel even stronger after reading your interview with him. And for anybody listening, if you didn't get a chance to read Sam's interview with Giannis, I really think it's great. And I love the part at the end where they're trying to get him to get on the bus. But it's very important that he wanted to get the point across to you that he is locked into Milwaukee. And that stuck with me when I was finished reading it.
No, I appreciate it.
It was a great interview. I mean, I'm assuming you feel the same way as me, like he's sticking around.
I do. Yeah. And, you know, we were joking off air, you know, forgive the lack of energy here on the pod. It was a late night talking to Giannis and turning this story, but it was worth it. I always enjoy our conversations. We've always gotten along pretty well. And quick backstory, you know, I saw him in Sacramento the other night when they came through, and I didn't want to catch him off guard. And I said, hey, you know, you think any chance we can connect in San Francisco and chop it up a little bit? And I kind of joked that, you know, I know it's a little loud around you. Maybe you don't feel like talking right now. Was pleasantly surprised that he was open to it. So we connect a couple nights later in San Francisco. And the helpful part is that I had a couple days to be around the Bucks a bit and to talk to, you know, Doc Rivers, to talk to guys on the coaching staff, to talk to players and get a sense of what they think of what's going to happen here. Because we got to be honest about how our jobs are tricky. Sometimes we evaluate situations from afar, but we're not always kind of, you know, in the trenches, so to speak, with those teams. And after a couple of days, I really did feel like, man, I don't think this guy's going anywhere. Doc is raving about his level of engagement and his commitment and his coachability. His teammates are saying that he's invested and he's not somebody who's just kind of an empty suit. So by the time Giannis and I talk, and it was a classic kind of loading dock post-game conversation, after he spent time with his family, after he was signing, you know, jerseys from his Greek national team, but just dealing with a lot. To your point about, you know, him wanting to get his message across, it definitely struck me that not only was it late and you would think he would trying to get out of there, but once he was trying to convey what he's trying to convey, I mean, the entire team was waiting on the bus and security's yelling at him and he's saying, you know, well, hold tight. I got to finish this. I personally think that, you know, here's the thing. We can cut to the chase. October 1st, he's eligible for a 4-year, $275 million extension. If he ultimately decides that he is ready to do something different, then he is smart enough to know that he does not need to ask for a trade. Like, right. And so that's why right now, to your question, I do not see it happening before the deadline. I would be shocked at this point if something happens before the deadline, because the only way that something was going to happen before the deadline is if he went full Jimmy Butler, full Carmelo Anthony, full Dwight Howard back in the day, like where you flip over tables and you say you want out. And maybe you dog. I mean, Jimmy's a great example. I mean, we can call it like it is in Minnesota. He dogged it on certain nights because he was done with that franchise. And Giannis,
I thought you were going to say in Miami.
In Miami too.
You know, dogged it there too.
Yeah. And so, and that's
Giannis isn't that guy though.
And he made that clear. You know, I think it was 2 different times he used the expression, that is not in my nature. It was the one quote about, I will never ask for a trade, but it was also, I will never quit on my team. That is not in my nature. So with that in mind, if he's not going to do those things, which he made it crystal clear that he's not, then the Bucks are not incentivized to move him. They're going to try to find ways to improve this roster yet again, with GM John Horst trying to make the rounds and find kind of one last Hail Mary to see if they can salvage this season.
Well, I mean, speaking of, you mentioned AD before. I've heard some rumors that maybe the Bucks are considering trading for Anthony Davis. What do you think?
They did look into it. You know, for now, I have been told it's very, very, very unlikely. So I don't think that's happening. One of the problems is that, you know, one of the possible structures of that kind of a deal, you know, could have Miles Turner going out, right?
Right.
And then you got AD playing the 5 spot, which he never likes to play and constantly complains about playing. So just the hoop head in me would love to see it. I think it'd be a fascinating combination to have AD and Giannis together, but I don't see that happening. I think I'm curious to see what they ultimately do before the deadline, because they continue to get tied to a lot of different players, Zach LaVine, Malik Monk, Michael Porter Jr. But there's also a sense that like they've kicked the tires on a lot, but are not necessarily trying to kick the door down on a deal just yet. So, we'll see where it lands.
Yeah. Well, let's go to Anthony Davis. Is it Atlanta or bust, or maybe the Clippers can throw their hat in the ring? Where do you see him winding up? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I do think there is potentially a domino effect between the Trae Young trade and the AD situation, because like I said before, whatever chance there was of AD going to Atlanta with Trae Young on the roster, it was 0. And so I don't know what that number is now, but it is in play because Trae is no longer on the roster. And so Atlanta and Toronto are 2 teams that are routinely discussed as having actual interest. Now, the Toronto problem is that the stuff that would most logically come back in a Raptors Dallas deal is it's long-term money, which is not what Dallas wants. And so that's a major sticking point. It feels like the Hawks are front and center right now. And, we'll see if something actually pops there, because from there, I don't know how robust the market is. I've written about the Warriors where, AD's agent, Rich Paul, myself and Christian Clark, our Mavericks beat writer, reported this the other day, that he's encouraged the Mavericks to be more aggressive assessing the market. AD's camp does not believe that there's an extension waiting for him this summer, even though the Mavs have they've kind of signaled that maybe there is. Nobody really believes them.
Right.
So, the Warriors thing, though, has obstacles of its own. Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green, 2 players the Warriors do not want to get rid of. You can't really do an AD deal without moving one of those guys. So for me right now, it's a matter of seeing, is the Atlanta thing going to come together in the next week or so?
Yeah. What's the surprise name before we get to the deadline that we're going to start hearing here in the next few weeks?
Man, I feel like we got most of them.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah. I mean, this is just speculation. New Orleans continues to be a bit of a mystery spot, because there's been a lot of focus on Trey Murphy III and Herb Jones. So Trey, the intel there is that, you can get him, but it's for a massive price tag that it doesn't seem like anybody's in that stratosphere in terms of meeting their demands, and then Herb is kind of virtually untouchable, it seems like, and who knows, we'll see. But I continue to just wonder, and this is just me, is like, of all the big names that you felt like were gettable, the John Morants, the LaMelo Balls, the Trae Youngs, the Anthony Davises, like, where are we at with Zion Williamson? You do hear occasional chatter about teams being interested in him. If you go back to early December, and this, all 30 teams will have these kind of somewhat routine calls with each other where they take notes on each other's rosters and try to get a sense of how they see their team. And a lot of teams, when they talked to New Orleans at that time, came away thinking, they didn't know what the price tag was, but that Zion was gettable. And so if you get closer to the February 5th deadline and you have some contenders or would-be contenders with a level of desperation that could increase between now and then, I look at Zion and just kind of wonder, is anybody want to take a flyer on him and step forward and get a guy that at his best, which is we have not unfortunately seen very much, as still an impact player.
He's looked good.
Yeah.
He's looked good at times, especially this year. I mean, he had that stretch where he was coming off the bench for a few games, and you just forget how explosive, and I mean, he's got amazing touch. Yeah. So hopefully he figures it out. And by the way, having American Jokic, Derek Queen down there, I think does open a lot of doors for what they're going to do. And I don't know, that team it's interesting, even though they're bad. So,
well, and that's a different version of, you see, like the Sixers come to mind, right? Like when you have a youth movement that is starting to give you confidence, then that's where it gets uncomfortable for the old guys. And Zion's not an old guy yet, but in Philly, it's Joel Embiid, it's Paul George. that's when you start kind of wondering, oh boy, do they need me anymore? And am I expendable? And like I don't think there's a market for big fella in Philly, but that's another guy that comes to mind. Is
hey, we're rooting for Embiid. He's been looking good lately too. Yeah. I mean, again, this is the Sixers are a pretty fun story. I'm sure that you're going to do some stuff on them here the rest of the season because they might wind up in home court. Who knows?
Yeah.
Like they're actually playing pretty good basketball.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, go and read that Giannis interview over at The Athletic if you haven't. It's really worth your time, especially if you're a Bucks fan, if you want to feel good about, having Giannis for the rest of the year. Sam, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to Sam for being on the show. Thanks to Zena, as always. I'm Dave DuFour, and this has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for waking up with us.